After the British evacuated Boston on March 17th, 1776, General George Washington guessed correctly that their next target would be New York. By mid-April, Washington had marched his 19,000 soldiers to lower Manhattan. He strengthened the batteries that guarded the harbor and constructed forts in its northern Manhattan and on Brooklyn Heights across the East River on Long Island. Washington waited throughout June for the British to appear, hoping that somehow his undisciplined troops could hold off the attack, which he was certain would come in Manhattan. In early July, 400 British ships with 32,000 men commanded by General William Howe arrived at Staten Island. When Howe offered a pardon to the rebels, Washington answered, "Those who have committed no fault want no pardon." While he was still convinced that the British would attack Manhattan, he sent more troops to Brooklyn. Washington placed General Israel Putnam in charge of Brooklyn Heights and stationed John Sullivan to the south and Lord Stirling to the southwest on the Heights of Guam. He posted guards along the main roads leading through the heights, but failed to secure the rarely used Jamaica Pass to the east. This proved a costly mistake, since General Howe planned to lead 10,000 men through the pass on the evening of August 26th and attack the Americans on Brooklyn Heights from the rear. Close up, close up! Over the crackle of musket fire and boom of cannon, the indomitable Major Mordecai Gist and many of the founding officers of the Baltimore Independent Cadets ordered their men forward. Shots tore through the ranks of more than 200 Marylanders. Undaunted, the men continued to surge toward an old stone house occupied by British General Lord Cornwallis and his redcoats. A century earlier, the home's massive walls had been built to fend off potential Indian attacks. Now, these same barriers that shielded the Americans were called upon to repel them. Cornwallis's men trained a light cannon and musket fire on the advancing Marylanders, who launched a preemptive strike aimed at protecting their brothers in arms. The British continued pouring the canister and grape upon the Americans like a shower of hail. In the melee, the flower of some of the finest families of the South were cut to atoms. Defying the carnage unfolding around them, Gist's men closed their ranks over the bodies of their dead comrades and still turned their faces to the foe. The boldness of the Marylanders' charge initially unhinged Cornwallis's defenses as his gunners nearly abandoned their artillery, but intense fire from the house and fresh reinforcements compelled the Marylanders to retreat and then mount yet another charge. From a distant hill, General George Washington watched the gallant display through his spyglass. As the Marylanders began to fall, he cried, "Good God, what brave fellows I must this day lose!" Yet not all was lost. Scores of Marylanders, led by Major Gist, held off the British long enough to save a corps of Washington's troops, and arguably the bulk of the nascent American army, from destruction. The Marylanders' forlorn assault delayed the British attack on American fortifications at Brooklyn Heights and allowed hundreds of Americans to escape to the temporary safety of their entrenchments. The soldiers who participated in that unorthodox attack would become known as the Immortals, or the Maryland 400. With their blood, these men bought, in the words of one American, an hour more precious to American liberty than any other in its history. Gist and several men in his group escaped to fight future battles that changed the face of a nation.